This is how you're going to build your own cybersecurity lab at home and completely for free. So buckle up and let's get started. It also happens to be the best cybersecurity beginner project that you can work on because you're getting hands-on using cybersecurity tools and you're building something completely from scratch. I'll share all the resources and tools that we're going to be using linked in my description, so let's get started. First things first, why does someone just starting out in cybersecurity want to build a home lab? There are two main cybersecurity career paths. Number one, if you want to go into offensive security or ethical hacking, and number two, if you want to go into defensive security or become an SOC analyst. And this guide is going to be helpful for both cases. Firstly, you're going to need a laptop or PC that has at least 8 gigs of RAM. This is because you're going to be installing virtualization software because your home lab is going to be a virtual machine that basically lives on top of your existing PC or laptop's operating system. I personally recommend at least having 16 gigs of RAM, and nowadays RAM is a lot cheaper than it was back when I was in high school. And personally, I also recommend at least a 256 gig SSD or standard hard drive. You're basically going to be allocating the resources from your personal PC into this virtual machine using virtualization software, which is going to be either the VMware Workstation or VirtualBox. And both of these tools are free to download, so you can pick whichever one you prefer. In my case, I'm going to go with the VMware Workstation. Next, you're going to download the Kali Linux ISO file, which is essentially a pre-built virtual machine that you can directly install using VMware. First thing you're going to do is go on VMware and download the VMware Workstation for free. Just follow the standard steps to install. And then once you have that ready, go on the official Kali Linux website and download the latest version of the Kali Linux ISO. Next, you're going to follow the steps to allocate some resources from your PC to your new virtual machine. Here, I recommend at least allocating 4 gigs of RAM for your Kali Linux VM and at least 30 to 40 gigs of hard drive space. Then next, you're going to select the Kali Linux ISO as the boot disk and then officially install Kali Linux following the instructions on the screen. Now, once you download Kali,
Is Tails a good option? I usually use Tails as my operating system. Is that a VM or is that something completely different?
Linux, set your password and do everything. Create your user account, set your password. I'd also recommend updating all your packages. These are essentially all the packages that come with the Kali Linux ISO, which is a bunch of tools and software that you'll be using for anything that you'll do on your future home lab, including working on CTFs or capture the flag challenges, potentially spinning up your own SIEM or security information and event management tool, or whatever other cybersecurity training that you're working on. This is just a simple Linux command, sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. Now, depending on how advanced you want to get, you can also configure an isolated lab network specifically for your VM so that any testing or training that you do on your machine doesn't affect any external devices. But personally, I also think you can skip this step if you're primarily just using this machine as a lab for CTFs.
Don't skip it. Here's why. You always want to start off the best and the most secure. That's something that I had learned from one of he was in IT and security, and he would talk as if like I didn't need it, but download it anyways, and I'll teach you how to install it and what it does. Like most of these things you probably don't need, but there's gonna come a point in time where you may need it or you may not need it. Point I'm trying to describe is you want to make sure you're like as equipped and as protected as possible. Hacking is different than programming or any other niche where like where it's like where you play an RPG game and a nigga that ass, but he has all the best gear, like he has the level 100 gear. He bought everything, like this dude just buys off his parents' credit card or whatever he is, but he just sucks at the game mechanically. In hacking, it's advantageous to be that person. You get what I mean? It's just advantageous because at least your ass is covered. It ain't like other industries, bro.
And training. So essentially what you have right now is your bare bones home cybersecurity lab. It really is that simple to get set up, but coming up next is the fun part, which is adding and installing cybersecurity and hacking tools to your Linux VM. Now again, Kali already comes with a lot of different tools, and you can easily find a list of what it already comes with pre-built. I'd also consider doing some research into what each of those tools do and get hands-on using them. But if you want to install a new tool, for example, let's use Burp Suite as an example. The command for this is sudo apt install Burp Suite. For any tools that you download on this machine, you'll be using the command line directly, which also gives you some experience navigating the command line. And personally, I think this is a great place to start your training. I'd look up the top 20 to 30 most common Linux commands so that you get more comfortable navigating the command line. I know a lot of cybersecurity professionals who have years and years of experience, and they primarily use Linux through the command line. And you'll also find that a lot of hacking and CTF tools are built only on command line, so they don't have a GUI or user interface, which means the only way to use those tools is through the command line. So make sure you get familiar with it. I would take a few days to practice that, whether it just be creating files, moving files, creating folders, navigating, updating, installing tools, deleting files, etc. Now, another great way to get into cybersecurity is also by starting in IT first. I'd recommend the Course Careers IT course that is taught by Josh Madakor, and he basically walks you through setting up Active Directory, setting up your own IT ticketing system, basically building out an IT system from scratch. And that is also a really, really good project to get onto your resume. I also did an interview with a recent graduate of the Course Careers IT course who was able to get a job within 4 weeks of starting the program, which is insane. But you can check out their free IT intro course, and you can also get $50 off the entire course using a link in my description. I'd highly recommend checking that out. Okay, so now this is where the real training comes in. First, the fancy way to do this is to spin up another VM and basically creating your own target machines to exploit. Of course, this is an option, but personally, this is basically going to double the resources of your home lab, and I wouldn't recommend this, especially if you're a beginner and you're
Learn what it takes to get into sports. From sportscasting to marketing, content creation to management.
your laptop is probably only 8 to 16 gigs, so no need to put that kind of resource limitation on your PC. But there are already a lot of vulnerable applications, vulnerable systems on the internet that are purposely made to be exploitable, so you can get some practice. For example, Metasploitable or the OWASP Spoof Shop. These are insecure web applications that you can test exploits on and be able to get some real-world experience and hands-on practice with.
I see why she said download that motherfucking VM. These motherfuckers got exploits that are motherfucking serious on the net and easy to use for testing. You know, that's like a hacker paradise right there. I ain't gonna cap.
Without actually hacking into someone's website, which is very illegal, so please don't do that. That would basically make you a cyber criminal, and that is not the path that we're trying to go down here. Another way to do this, my recommendation is to look at the OWASP top 10, which are the top 10 most common web vulnerabilities out there, and basically finding guides online, for example, how to exploit a website with a cross-site scripting vulnerability. There are a lot of guides out there, and I'll also link a few to check out in my description if you're interested in doing that kind of testing and looking up example guides online. I'll also link a few in my description for you to understand the vulnerability and how this vulnerability is exploited by attackers in the real world. Another great way to get some hands-on training with your new home lab is also by doing capture the flags. I've mentioned this already in the video, but there is a website called CTF Time, and it basically gives you a list of all the upcoming CTFs or capture the flags. These are essentially hacking challenges, but not only are they good for red teamers or ethical hackers, but it's also great for those on blue team, because there are also CTFs nowadays that are catered towards defensive security, but also just understanding how vulnerabilities are exploited in the wild is a great way for anyone on either the red team or the blue team to be able to get familiar with common threats and vulnerabilities that they'll likely also be dealing with on the job. So highly recommend doing CTFs, and most CTFs are free, and a lot of them end up having prizes that you can win if you make the top of the scoreboard. So it's a win-win, learning and free stuff, but that is basically the gist of it. Hopefully this video can help make cybersecurity training a bit more accessible and a lot less intimidating to beginners, because at the end of the day, we all start somewhere, and you don't have to be a hacking whiz at 13 or be able to write shell scripts before you even start your first job. Yes, cybersecurity is a very competitive field, and for good reason, because there are real-world nation states and attackers who are attacking government, financial, healthcare institutions, so it is serious business, but it is also a really interesting career path to go down, especially if you're someone who is continuously curious, interested in learning, and the technical details of cyber attacks, of threats and vulnerabilities, of different security.
Here's what I'm gonna say, because I feel like this is nearing the close of the video, and this is where I can shine. Baby, this is where I shine. If you black, and this is just for my minorities, the reason why they want you in cybersecurity is because we're scammers. We live in an environment where scams and different types of fraud activities take place. Level 1 to IT and I guess hacking is social engineering. They're trying to socially engineer people who might already be equipped to be good at defense. Who better than people who live in the hood and know a lot of scams? So I don't want you guys to look at what I said as a racist slur. It's the same for programming and developers. That's just an anomaly to see people of our color in that space. But IT, you might see a lot of people in that space. You know, just think of it like this. When you think of scams, right? It's gonna sound funny, but you think of the African Prince scam. You know what I mean? You think of people carding and scamming banks. Think of fraud. You think of checks, which is not really the checks one is not really a color thing. Everyone's been doing checks, but like you get the gist. Certain things are catered to a certain specific race. I'm not gonna lie to you. And, I just want people to be very prepared and honest with themselves at the idea of seeing a person of our color in anywhere of the tech space. Like, we are here to stay, and sadly, you guys don't understand how to steal from people as well as black people. You guys stolen from us for years, and you guys don't even know it. So we avoid you guys, and we know how to avoid you guys. We know how to act fake, we know how to act stupid, but we also know how to steal back. That's the one thing we know how to do. I hope y'all enjoyed this video. Thank you to WithSandra. Um, honestly, I'm gonna like this, and I'm gonna subscribe, but I'm not gonna leave the ringer on because I haven't been bought in yet. I'm an honest nigga. I'm an honest nigga. I'm gonna say I reviewed great content. I feel like I've seen this type of video, Happy Holidays, multiple times, and honestly, I've seen it multiple times. So like I'm pretty sure she's doing something for the community, the beginners and stuff like that. So this was great content. It's just not content that I would need too much of, but your makeup looks nice.